Welcome to episode 50 of Calm Talks. Today we have an absolutely inspiring guest and a true gentleman, Jamal Enakhimion. If you're looking for how an immigrant has found success in the real estate game, then lock in for today's episode. Our guest Jamal has a never say die and hustle attitude. Jamal left for America from a very rough neighborhood in London and today manages some of the biggest aviation projects in America. That is just one part of his hustle. The other is in the property game, and that is where Jamal has taken calculated risks to get into the game despite economic challenges over the past few years. Let's get into it. Boys, we're live. Jamal, it's an honor to have you on today. It's episode 50 of Calm Talks. You have quite an interesting background and backstory with how you have Nigerian descent. You were born in London and then you grew up in the United States. So fair to say, tell us a little bit about your backstory.
I mean, it's a little bit of a mix. I mean, honored to be on episode 50. That feels like some type of a milestone. It's not 100, but 50, I'll take it halfway point.
We're halfway there.
Yeah.
The Invincibles were that close to it. One game away.
I know. Yes. I appreciate having me on. But as far as the background, I was, very much, from North London, grew up in half of my life, I should say. It was not half anymore. I'm 31. But was born in North London, then moved to America when I was almost 10 years old. Family does have Nigerian descent, which, being British and Nigerian is not really that foreign when you're in North London. It's pretty much most of the Black people you run into are either British Nigerian or British Jamaican. And then some people, originally have long family ties from the UK, but that wasn't that foreign. But moving to America, that was, I guess, shocking for a lot of Americans because they weren't used to, TV shows like Top Boy now or, all these other prominent young Black British actors where they can say, oh, okay, their familiarization with England was like the royal family. And I remember moving to America and they're just like, whoa, I didn't even know Black people lived in England. Like, what's going on? They didn't understand the accent. It was all, it was all weird. But that's Philadelphia is where I moved to in the States and kind of spent most of my time growing up. And obviously most recently now I've been in the greater part of the New York area.
Jamal, it's no secret to a deal, but probably to the audience listening, but you and I are actually from a very similar area in London.
Yeah.
I've spoken about it before on our individual podcasts, but I'm going to let you take it away. What's it like living there and how was that?
For me, you don't really realize how kind of, how unique a situation is, I should say, compared to the average kid. I came to America and then I was used to what normal kids go through over here, which I would call suburbia. And, their families have these schools, they have these counties, and they live in suburbia versus North London. I mean, you're a kid and you're riding the buses by yourself from whatever young age. You're kind of roaming around the streets. Unfortunately, a lot of the times without a lot of parental control because it's just, the cost of living so high. Usually you have a parent that's working a lot. Which allows you a lot of flexibility to be a kid just roaming around North London. Now, I grew up in an area called Muswell Hill. I actually split my time. It's between Muswell Hill and what is now Hoxton, Shoreditch type of area, Old Street, to kind of be more exact. Where I had my grandma in Old Street and my mother in Muswell Hill. I would spend all my weekends in Old Street and my Mondays through Fridays in Muswell Hill. Those areas were not the best now. It's almost like a lot of these areas and pockets you see now where they get quote unquote gentrified. It's funny. People go, why'd you move to America? Well, I moved to America because, these areas were not necessarily the safest when I was in those Hoxtons and Old Street. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but you were never too far away from trouble. And I think that's kind of the best way to describe it. But going to school there from a young age to have all these different, backgrounds. I had a friend from Greece, Pakistan, India. You know so much about cultures. You understand the differences in Northern India and Southern India. And you're 7, 8 years old, understanding these different backgrounds and dialects because everyone's parents, for example, were for the most part first generation. So the diversity of being in London at that time was just amazing. From that to the music. There was a lot of originality in London, I would say, in the late 90s that was kind of just taken over, not from a local stage, but even a mainstream stage. You think about all those certain boy bands, or we were just talking about the Beckhams prior to this podcast running, and Spice Girls were the biggest thing. Shaggy, Craig David, Oasis. Like, we had such diversity kind of going on in England during that time. So yeah,
You
it's
know what?
definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I obviously have the same, very similar experience to you. Like, it's like such a like dichotomy, right? In London, like you have like a really rough area, but there's so much inspiration coming from it. People want to get out, want to improve themselves, want to do something different. And it's all mixed in with like having different cultures and people just trying to express themselves. And I feel like that's kind of what, for me, made London difficult and challenging to have a day to day life. But also, that's where you kind of get your burning inspiration from.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of figure it out over there. That's kind of a lot of the, you start to look at things and you do the math. And I guess I can't imagine from an adult perspective or a parent's perspective where you're doing the math every month, figuring how the hell are we going to do this? And I know for myself as a kid looking back, I'm like, yeah, you know what? We did have about 6 or 7 different cars. And you start to think, oh, wait, we have these different cars because why? One's breaking down. You might not have a car for about 3 to 4 months. You're riding a bus, and then your mom has to struggle to kind of build more money and buy the new car. So it was very much, I don't know. And if you remember those little key cards that you would put for electricity, so you would have to, it was like pay as you go for your electricity. And there were certain moments where, you run out of money to put in the key card, and you got to spend that time. That will be the time going over to the grandma's house, for the 2 or 3 days as we try and figure out how to get the light bill up and running. So you have those kind of tougher beginnings, but I mean, I guess it just builds you.
How does that translate to when you came to America, and how did you use that inspiration from London to like build your character over here?
I would say, I mean, from the diversity or I don't know, let me go back to, you said the going through those kind of hardships. I would kind of go with when you do kind of, make it, you don't really take it for granted. You understand where you are. You always kind of try and remember the beginnings. I never try and get too ahead of myself. You try and future plan, because obviously you want to set goals and milestones of where you want to be at certain ages, whatever, in your career or businesses, whatever. But you still remember those humble beginnings. So for me, just in the way I generate money and the way I save my money, it's very much different because of those humble beginnings. I understand. Yes, you just never feel like you're too far away from kind of being set back all the way to where you are. It's like a little bit of a fear/fire that kind of burns in you.
Jamal, that's really interesting. I'm curious. Like, did you have other influences in your life who were teaching you this? Like, where does this come from?
My dad was a big input. So that was kind of that's the reason I moved to America. My dad had moved to America in the mid 90s. I came to America in 2001. My dad was very big on just life is fun, but it's a lot more fun when you're making some money and you're comfortable. Not to be just like Richie Rich, but it's just all about comfort. And he would always even say my decisions as far as what I want to do when I grow up. He would always ask me from a young age, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And he was kind of strict about his responses if I picked, say, a profession that wasn't going to be as well off. Because, frankly, he would make it and say, hey, that's a great idea, but it sounds fun. But you know what? When you can't pay your bills, it's no longer fun. And that was his attitude going into it, which for some people, they would like to, guide their kids, encourage them to do whatever they want. But I would say we weren't as privileged to be able to, or to be in that position to say, okay, you can just be an artist or just be free. And then, you will be okay. We got your back if it doesn't work out,
The American dream, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, to be honest with you, like, I had a similar upbringing with my father, who would always say, like, life is a war. And he would say that because he's like, you got to keep fighting for everything that you have. And I remember when I used to get in trouble when I was in high school, he would give me lessons and say, get your act together, and then you can enjoy all you want. But first, get your life in order and everything like that. So how did you transition to like the American dream, where the belief is like you can do anything and everything? How has that been for you?
I mean, I kind of saw, America was great because, I moved to Philadelphia. So it wasn't necessarily what you would imagine in a New York, but it was very much a lot of the same type of, metropolitan type of city. And you can see it. Like, you can see for me, even though London has a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different, the mindset of a hustler in London is just alive and well. But I think there's always a cap as to how far people think that they can make it in London compared to America. When I talk to certain individuals, there's no cap. It's just like I want to be, reach for the stars, and that's a goal that I can set, and if I work hard enough, I can make it. So in America, I kind of felt that adjustment, and maybe family, friends, or other people that you meet. For me, going to college was a big change for me because it was the first time where I really saw other minorities, in a large group have similar backgrounds. Maybe being first generation, maybe being from Jamaica, from Trinidad, or having so that you have that influence. But then you also so you can relate to as far as kind of the parenting structure, which might have been a tad bit stricter. But then you also had just like minorities that were all goal focused, but also stressed the importance of wanting to like kind of have fun along the way. Where it's kind of hard, usually in high school, you either have those kids that are having too much fun, or individuals that you just can't really relate to. So college was that big transition for me, and then kind of realizing, hey man, like these internships or these co-ops, they can kind of start as soon as the first career fair your freshman year, which is something that I actually did. I transitioned and I got my first internship. I knew I had an internship, I should say, after my like 6 weeks of college. So once I had that, it was kind of the beginning points for me to say, okay, I got to go get it.
And we had spoken before the podcast, and I think you had mentioned you studied engineering. Is that right?
Yeah, I started aeronautical engineering.
Did you have time for partying when you were studying that?
It was a mix. I mean, you pick your spots. Obviously when the exams and stuff will pop up, it's kind of hunker down mode. But you pick your spots. I mean, I was kind of had more of a stretched out schedule. One due to just finances, being in and out of certain classes or internships and co-ops. So, there was a couple semesters that I took off to work just to kind of support going back to, paying for school once I was there full time. So, I had my gaps where the schedules were less busy versus more busy. But it was good. I mean, I had friends around me that were all in other engineering fields. So we kind of picked our spots. Okay, this is kind of a slow period. This is one of a period where we can kind of go out. But college has so many moments. I think right now, for example, they're on their fall break already. They've been there for 4 weeks. And they already have like Monday and Tuesday off. And then there's a Thanksgiving break. Then there's a Christmas break. Then there's a spring break. So there's always moments where you can kind of have your fun.
You have an aviation background, right? And I know that's what you do day to day for your job, and that's just one part of like your hustle. But the other part of your hustle is also in the property game, in the real estate game. Can you kind of just tell us, like, how do you manage your time between two? What does your day to day look like?
Well, I'll first. I mean, the background. I'll begin with this. The background in engineering started in high school. I was always very good at math, and the sciences were added to it. And I just felt being an engineer, that would be my career path. Real estate, I never really thought too much as far as the world of real estate. It really happened just from transitioning from going to college in the Midwest to now coming to the tri-state area. When I went to college, I had 3 roommates. My rent was $350 a month. Then I started to work in like Connecticut areas and stuff. My rent, again, I had roommates, $700-800 a month. Then you come to the New York area, you're kind of ignorant to how much you should kind of be demanding from a salary perspective because you don't fully know cost of living until you really live there. And I start looking around for housing, and I'm just like, whoa, like I can't even live by myself here without spending a couple thousand, and even a couple thousand. And people tell me that's a cheap number. And when you come from those, again, the humble beginnings, you're looking at these numbers like, what the hell's going on here? I can't do this. So I just told myself, okay, I am going to rent, but even though I didn't want roommates at the time, I think I was like 27. I think I said, yo, man, I got to go buy a spot. Like, I got to really go get it. So then it started with that, buying my first property, which was a condo in Hudson County area, which is just over the water on the Jersey side here. And I just enjoyed it. And I enjoyed buying one, but I knew I kind of always wanted another one. I had an aunt that bought a home in Chelsea of New York, maybe in the mid 90s. And this is when the area wasn't as, nice as it is now. And she bought that place, and let's just say it's 4x'd its value from when she first purchased it. And I started to look at that like, wow, Like just having that one little property right there is low key enough for her to retire off of. So I started telling myself, wait a minute, we this is something here. You keep complaining. I used to complain a lot about, how much my job was paying and feeling undervalued, yada, yada, yada. And then I said, you know what? You got to stop complaining, kind of figure it out yourself. And that's kind of where the real estate thing happened. And I got interested more and more and actually took a trip to Europe for a couple years during COVID, a couple months, sorry, during COVID. I said, you know what? I got to rent my place out. Like I can't just have it vacant for those couple months. From there, we started looking at short-term rentals, and from the short-term rentals and kind of seeing how, I enjoyed the hospitality aspect of it. I kind of have, you almost nurture all your tenants that come in because they're all just like people that you care for. They all have different stories, different backgrounds. I really started to enjoy it, at least with only one property. And now I'm currently working on the next scale of this, which is something I'm doing myself and my fiance, where we're building a new construction that we're also going to short-term rent out.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, man. Like, you realize that you can't, keep chasing the rent. So you decided to jump on the ladder. And I think what's really important to note here is that you did it in a really difficult time.
I did it. Go ahead. Go ahead. You want to finish off?
I was going to ask you, you're seriously, you're not really risk averse by the looks of it. Can you kind of tell us about your mindset when it comes to buying property and taking risk?
For me, I just like my money moving. Like, first, people like having a bunch of money in their bank account so they can just stare at it every day and they can go have tea and just sit and talk about all the money that's here. And for me, I want to go do something with it, right? I've always had ideas of real estate or want to own a franchise or this or that. So I just kind of like to have my money moving that way versus like, a mutual fund or whatever. Like, but unfortunately, the risk averse thing, for me, I look at it, we're younger. So I kind of I push it a little bit as far as trying to get these investments across the line. Unfortunately, when you first start investing in real estate, you start to realize, man, like it takes a lot to buy these properties and to get pre-approved for these places. The banks have only gotten stricter. This isn't 2008 when there was, the housing crash and you could show them one pay stub and they would give you $500,000. So now, especially when I got my first one during COVID, these banks are really kind of on your ass as far as like how much they want you to put down, your debt to income, so your interest rates, your property mortgage insurance. There's a lot of things that banks do to make things harder for you. So I've had to push it a little bit. Now, as I transition and in my 30s, let's just say I have 2 kids in the next 5-6 years, you kind of got to pull back that risk a lot more, right? The emergency fund is not just for yourself, but it's for your family. So, but I'm hoping that by the point when it's time to slow down, you have 3, 4, 5 investment properties cooking. So there's no need to kind of go as crazy as you did when you're in your 20s.
How important is future planning for you? Because it sounds like you're always thinking about the future. You just mentioned kids, a fiance. You're talking about how your aunt had like a 4X on her property in Chelsea. Are you always sort of future planning?
Always. And sometimes I think I'm just getting to the point of having an okay balance where you're future planning, but you're also living in the moment. I used to be at my job 4 or 5 years ago where I would literally look at the calendar and then my buddy would be like, I know what you're doing. He's like, you're literally counting the days when you're going to get paid. Because I would count my days and how much I wanted to calculate and put things here, things there, my plans in the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And that's good to a certain point because you're focused on what you want to do, but then you're also sometimes missing out on the moment, right? So I think now kind of having a fiance, it's pretty easy to kind of just have nights where you go, oh, you know what? We work hard this week. Let's go grab a bite to eat. Let's go travel here. Let's go do something. For me, it's going to England now is a lot different. It's not just me going to England and going back to North London. Now I'm traveling to all different places. I'm going to, Covent Gardens. I'm going, to farmhouses, and, so it's a lot different, much more of a feel. But I do think it's very important to future plan because if you don't have a plan, for you, what are the girls use? The whiteboards or whatever those things are, like not the whiteboards, the things where they cut up little pieces of mood boards. Yeah, like if you don't kind of have that, it's hard for things to just happen for you. Like they don't just pop up and just change overnight. You have to kind of envision yourself, setting your goals. I used to always say, my best times when I used to plan my next play from a real estate perspective, I was broke as shit. But I would be listening to all the content, all the podcasts. I'd have all the knowledge. So when the money was in the account, I was 10 steps ahead. I already knew what to do with it. I was going to go here, going to go here. I was going to go to this bank. I knew what, the terms, the rates, if I needed to, for example, this next property in the Poconos, we did a thing called a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. Before I applied for the HELOC, I had been researching what banks were going to give me, say, 90% LTV, which is loan to value, or 95% LTV. I already knew the loan terms of every single bank listed out. Same things with like a business line of credit or a business credit card. You have to understand all these things well in advance, even if you might not have, say, the credit score to get approved for said card. But you have to understand, okay, what are you going to do with this business line of credit? What are you going to do with this business credit card? Do you want 0% APR? Do you want the high spending limit? What are your plans for your business or whatever you're doing, going forward?
It sounds like you're doing a lot of planning, but there's also a lot of intentionality behind what you're envisioning, what you're trying to create in your life. I know a lot of times it happens that a person can be trying to prepare, trying to consume content, trying to educate themselves, and they just suffer from taking that first step, taking that leap.
Yeah.
How did you actually take the leap into real estate? What was the beginning like for you?
Well, it was very much, again, for me and myself just being stable. I didn't want to rent because I lived in a high rental area. That was it. It wasn't like I intentionally started going into buying that condo and said, I want to rent this out, blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe eventually as I get older, it'll be paid off. You want to laugh about future planning. I have the mortgage, the remainder of the mortgage set up so it will be paid off by the time my first kid goes to college. Do I have a first kid yet? No. But I want to get ahead of it. If college is going to cost X amount, I've already paid off, say, 5 years of that bad boy. So the timing works out. So it'll be paid off around that time. Kid is one thing. I also kind of want to retire in, say, 25 years too, right? So you kind of want to, that's part of the future planning. Now, am I overly invested in how my retirement is going to look right now? No. But you have to start the process of thinking about, how you want to map out that end stage in life, that middle stage in life when you have multiple kids, or the early stage in life where you want to invest more in the current day.
Where does this motivation to succeed come from? Because you've got your fingers in a few pies. Property is one of them. Obviously, you've got a good career. Obviously, you have a stable relationship because you're engaged. Congratulations with that.
Appreciate you.
You've got your finger in so many pies right now. Where does the motivation to keep pushing forward come from?
It's kind of like there's always this famous interview with Kobe Bryant, and I think his team just like made the NBA Finals, and they're asking, Kobe, you're so excited, NBA Finals, yada yada yada, and he's sitting there answering the reporters, and his main comment was, just I don't know what you're excited for, job's not finished. And I think for me, I never got too comfortable. We've talked about the humble beginnings and not being too comfortable. But even though I could probably say that like I'm okay right now, and I'm very much blessed, there's still so much more to do. And we can speak for ourselves and say, okay, we're comfortable with our day to day. But, is the family set? Is the mom or the dad? Things happen in life and you want to make sure that everybody is okay. So I think that's kind of the motivation right now. It's not necessarily for me, but it's just for everyone around me to have that same level of comfort.
We spoke yesterday as we were kind of prepping and everything like that. And Jamal, you had asked about like if we're into basketball, and candidly, I'm not. But Kobe Bryant's jersey is the only basketball jersey that I have because like growing up in Pakistan, like I used to watch Kobe Bryant, and I used to like wake up at like 4 or 5 a.m. because the time difference, try to catch like a Kobe Bryant game, and I loved his mentality. Like obviously we know about Jordan, but like, I was in the Kobe Bryant era, like that's why I kind of aligned to him more. I love athletes like that, man. Like the Cristiano Ronaldo, the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans. Who are your role models in your life?
Role models. I don't know if I have a lot of role models. I have more like mentors, right? Where I kind of watch their story and I watch their career arc, and it's just like super inspiring. Like I love, like when you talk about real estate, I love Dave Ramsey. Even though I might disagree with 70% of the things that he does or how he invests, because he doesn't believe in like credit cards or taking loans out. He's Mr. Cash, cash, cash. I still really love or like respect him as a mentor. Um, just a lot of entrepreneurs, just guys that kind of just you know take the risk and then make it right and just kind of stand on their own to go do something like that. You bring up Kobe. That's a funny one because where I went to high school was the high school rivals of Lower Merion. That's where Kobe Bryant went to high school. So I almost grew up disliking Kobe. I went to school in Philadelphia. Kobe Bryant played for the Lakers. Even though Kobe's from Philadelphia, the Lakers had just beaten the Sixers in the NBA Finals in 2001, right before I got there. So there's like this tension between Philadelphia and not liking Kobe, and even like there's a bit of jealousy when you go up against his school and those kids have the flashier jerseys or the nicer shoes, yada yada yada. But then as you grow up, you start to really just respect people's their hustle, their motivation, their grind. The fact that they wake up and just have a goal and they just constantly just want to achieve it. And I'm just trying to figure out ways to stay motivated and get better.
I think you sort of mentioned a couple of minutes ago about thinking about your family, the family you do have, the family you're going to have. Is that really where you find a lot of your purpose from?
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, all these other things I don't care about anymore. I mean, you don't really care about being cool or anything like that, right? I mean, who you showing out for? I find my purpose for my family and to live life and continue to have more experiences. I definitely wanted to, I just started traveling a lot more now. Like I said, being from the UK, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse because all those international trips, I'm spending all of my time just going back to London, which don't let me sound a certain way. It's a beautiful place, but for the 15 times I've been to London, it could have been spread out across Spain, Italy, and so forth. So I'm starting to have those experiences now where I can do London and somewhere else. So I recently went to Turkey. So like, yeah, so those type of things are like kind of motivating for me or, kind of what keep me going. But outside of that, it's for the most part, just family. I don't really even get overly concerned or pressured like, oh, is my family proud of me? I'm pretty sure my family's proud of me. They tell me that all the time. So it's not, these aren't words that, you know, that they don't tell me. So yeah, it's pretty much just keeping it going. I mean, like once you start to see something that's working for you and you can see the success, why would you change things up?
Yeah, agreed. I think success, part of it is having talent, some of it's having skill, but a lot of it's down to consistency.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So it's just this, it's almost like working out. It's why I enjoy my fitness. It's just like, you understand that you're just trying to get that 1% better, 1%, 1% better. And then you understand like, okay, once you start to see those results, like, why would you slow down? Like you're doing something that's working.
Yeah, well, obviously, like Ant and I talk all about like peace and progression at Com Talks, and we have like listeners and viewers with different interests. I do want to ask a question for anyone who might be interested in real estate. What advice would you give to a beginner who is trying to get into real estate?
I would say understand first your budget. From that, pick your desirable areas. And then from that, when you pick your desirable areas, don't just pick a place on a map or something that your friend tells you or an Instagram reel that you think might be desirable. Go to the areas. When I was thinking about investing in Union City area, I would walk up and down Hudson County, 5 mile walks right after just at night, just feeling it out, feeling the neighborhood, seeing the new construction, seeing where, some areas that were lacking work, but just had potential that you could just feel, okay, 2 years, 3 years. Once they fix this one street, once they clean this up here, boom, this place is going to be a gold mine. For me, I would do those walks, and then I realized the best place to invest was literally right next to the place I was currently renting an apartment from. So it was pretty funny for me. But you really got to be boots on the ground. Now, the money will figure itself out. I mean, you have your goals that you want to have every month. I would have a certain savings goal every check, and as things got more paid off, it became easier. I would also say, in speaking about that, sometimes debt to income is more important than the cash you have on hand. So not everyone's story is the same, but I'll put it to you this way. Say a person makes $200,000 a year, but he's got two cars. Student loan debt is bad, but bad to a point where he's paying, say, $1,500 per month on his student loans. So it's not necessarily stretched out. It's more of a higher amount per month. He's got numerous other things that could affect what his debt to income may be. The person that makes, say, 150,000 but has less debt to income, which pretty much I'm saying his average bills per month is way lower than the guy that's making 200,000 but has the higher W-2 and higher money for the down payment. The person making less money can get approved for a bigger house, or a more expensive house, I should say, based on what his debt to income looks like. So I understand it's important to be saving and have that cash on hand, but you can buy a house as low as 3%. With FHA loans, 5% for a 5% conventional loan, etc. You just got a little bit of a PMI, which obviously you'll take care of in a couple of years because your home is going to most likely appreciate. But paying off the bills is almost just as important as saving for said house. That's probably my best advice I can give for a beginner.
That's solid advice, yeah, because I mean, real estate is definitely something that I want to get into. Ant and I talk about this. That's a lot of the ways that my father, who didn't have any education back in Pakistan, he kind of made his money through like flipping real estate and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I've always had my eyes on that. What does the outlook look like for real estate investing in this year and the next year?
This year is tough. It's a very wacky time, right? Because of the interest rates. I mean, sometimes, we look at these rates, we call them blood money, just based on how high these numbers are, 8, 9, 10% for these rates. And that's with good credit. It's tough to predict. And it's hard for me to just tell people, oh, go buy right now, buy right now, buy right now, because the rates are ridiculous. I will say this, though. If you're competing for a home right now, people get so gung-ho about the rates, they don't factor the home price and the home value. So say a $300,000 home that's available right now, instead of the line being wrapped around the block because, you have an open house and everyone's looking to buy it, now it's just yourself and somebody else that might be looking to buy that home. So now I can negotiate with that seller and say, hey, I'll offer you 280, I'll offer you 270. And you have a good chance of the seller coming down to the number you want based off the lack of competition of buyers right now. Boom. Compared to a year from now, let's just say Q4 2024, the interest rates drop down to 4%, which would be splendid. That same home that you wanted to buy for 300,000, maybe you put an offer down, but it's going to get bidded up. Now it's probably going to go for sale at 340, 350. So you're gung-ho about the interest rate, and that's why you waited. But meanwhile, there's a difference in, $60,000, $70,000 in the final sale of that home. I can refinance and get that same interest rate a year later. Meanwhile, you've now paid $40,000, $50,000 more. Who loses? And I also add the fact that in the meantime, while you waited to Q4 next year, I invested and bought my house this year, right now. So I'm no longer paying rent right now. I'm collecting appreciation right now, and I have 1 year less on my mortgage compared to the person that buys it next year.
I think one of the best quotes I remember, I can't remember who it's from, but it's that time in the market is more important than time in the market.
Exactly. I just look at it it's like with real estate, it's always a green light. It's just about how you want to attack it might be differently. Like sometimes I bring it back to sports. We talk about basketball. At certain points, the way the defender's guarding you, I might have to drive to the lane and get a layup. If the defender's sagging off, maybe I pull up for a jump shot. I still have the intentions of scoring, but my strategy of how I do it is just based on how the defender's guarding me.
You've spoken a lot about real estate, but you haven't really spoken about one of your other main hustles or your day-to-day. Talk us about the world of aviation and how you got in. Talk us about the world of aviation and how that funnels your life, how that fuels your life.
Aviation is fun, man. I think more recently I've realized there's so much more to aviation than how I started, which was working in private jets or just some of the bigger name companies that you would know that manufacture aircrafts, commercial or private, etc. Now working more in aviation construction, it's pretty cool because I never really thought I would, you would feel so much as far as the customer experience, working in, as a consultant and working in, big entities, the focus on safety and wayfinding and that customer experience of certain concessions as the customers are traveling through an airport. So that's really cool. And then obviously working kind of more now in aviation construction, it gave me more of that confidence to do what I'm doing now from the real estate standpoint of the new construction. I don't think I would have had that same confidence if I wasn't, glued to looking at architectural drawings every single day. And then on such a large scale, you have the confidence in saying, wait a minute, if I can look at 38,000 square feet and see that progress, it's an 1,800 square foot 3-bedroom is nothing, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think leveraging your one skill set for another skill set, like you're saying, looking at architectural drawings in your work and applying it to, say, building the house in the Poconos, I think being able to leverage different skills and apply them in different areas is actually a skill set in itself.
Oh yeah, and then when it's hand in hand, that's when you're at a sweet spot because now it's an added motivation to not only succeed in your day-to-day job, but when you realize that that skill set is going to translate to you outside of the office, suddenly I have an added motivation, right?
What's next on the horizon for you? But we know you have the job. We know we know you work in aviation and consultancy. We know that you have the property game on the side. What's next for you? What's the next aspiration?
I think right now it's shifting a little bit, right? So we have, we're going to have 2 investment properties kind of up and running as of next year. After that, it's kind of just like getting myself and my fiance where we want to be. As far as we have a wedding that we're planning, it's 2024, probably more about getting settled. Building a new construction is one thing, but now we have to, I think we're going to kind of jump into the digital space now. We're talking about potentially starting a podcast or how to really share content for some of the investments that we've made. It's not just being reliant on these platforms to showcase our homes. Are we going to launch our own website? Are we going to, things like that? Starting that space will probably be the next step for 2024, which is exciting because that's not really a high, income type of investment. You're not, having get approved by banks just to kind of start a podcast or really, you got to pay to host a website, an IP page, all that stuff, but it's not as intense. So I think that's going to be 2024. Obviously you future plan, you have goals and you have conversations and, I want to have a place in this country or that country, a vacation home here, there, and travel the world. That's going to happen, but in good time,
So I'm hearing a collaboration coming very soon, huh, Jamal?
Yeah, man. I kind of like the sound of it. You guys are setting the blueprint right now. I remember when Ann had this, talked about starting this thing, and you're already on episode 50 now. So I like how you guys are moving, even now using this platform that we're speaking on. So yeah, I gotta just get to it. I had excuses before of my schedule kind of being more busy. Now it's a little bit more lax, and I see no reason why I shouldn't just at least get the ball running with the content space.
I think I'm gonna speak for Ann both and I, but you'd crush, dude. You'd crush with like your personality, your energy, and also the knowledge, the wisdom that you have to share. So we're gonna help you out, man. Like with the website and everything, we've done the hard bits of figuring a lot of shit out. So
Yeah,
gotcha.
I appreciate that. I'd appreciate that.
With the digital space, are you thinking about like video podcasting or just audio? Like, I'm curious about that, man.
I would like to do a couple. I mean, I'm not going to, talk too much on my living environment, but I got a pretty nice spot that I think we could set up a couple cameras, some camera equipment, and have some video content going. So I got a pretty nice view here in the background, and I just kind of want to invite different guests and just share game. That's what it's about. Just sharing games, sharing knowledge. I know for myself, you talked about the mentors or people that you would look up to. Usually those people are older when it comes to like a financial standpoint, which is great because you can see how they've made it. But I'm a little bit on the younger end, so I feel like I could be able to relate more to that person that's just starting out with college or in high school that is trying to figure out, that's just not like their parents kind of nagging at them saying, hey, go do this, go do that. So that's kind of a space I want to dive in, as well as just really just talking with minorities about these opportunities. Because again, you don't really see too many of us. I've been in different spaces and different fields, and it's lonely. So I'm not a guy that wants it to be lonely. So I definitely want to share wisdom to a lot of minorities.
Talking about minorities, maybe this is biased because where we're from in London, Jamal, but everybody where we're from is a minority, and
Yeah,
then no one's a minority basically because everybody is different. If that
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But how is it being a minority in the US and trying to make your way in aviation and being a consultant and also just trying to tackle your day to day? Because I know you've actually struggled with some issues being a minority. I kind of want to just get a bit of your
Yeah, I
understanding.
mean, see, London, like you mentioned, it's such a melting pot, and it's kind of I was very naive because I thought my representation of, and I thought the way the world was London, and even Philadelphia. It's still a very diverse city when you compare it to the rest of, America. So I was very unaware of how things really were when I went to college in the Midwest. I remember going to college, and I went to college in Indiana. I would walk through the dorm rooms, and pretty much a good majority of kids had like Confederate flags hung up in their dorm rooms. It was like the artwork, and I'm like East Coast guy. I'm from America originally. What the hell's a Confederate flag? And I thought it was just a cooler flag that looked good. Yada yada yada. Then you start to realize, oh shit, like that's a statement. You're saying something as you put this Confederate flag up, as your bedroom artwork.
I have, I have to be honest. I don't know what that is. I'm going to be very honest, and maybe some of the listeners and viewers don't know either. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what it is.
So obviously, America had a civil war. The viewers are going to have to give us a time date on when that civil war was, but there was a civil war in America between the North and the South. The South had that Confederate flag. So technically, when you're showing that Confederate flag, it's almost like an act of terrorism, right? You're almost saying we still represent the old South and how old America used to be. The North won the Civil War, and then from that, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves after the Civil War ended. So now, with all these racial tensions and things that go on, you're saying a lot about how your dynamic of how you wish America to be by showcasing that Confederate flag from the artwork, or people that put Confederate flags on their license plates, things like that. It just shows a lot, right? But at that time, I don't even know the full history behind it. You know what I mean? Like I just, it's like a history class. I heard, okay, yeah, one cool, different flag, whatever. You're just from the South.
You know, obviously, neither of us were born in America. All of us were born outside of it. I really got exposed to racism after I moved to America. In Pakistan, everyone looks the same. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Everyone's like 99.9% are Muslim, 99.9% all have like a darker complexion, and there's like different shades. There's definitely colorism out there, but obviously not a lot of racism. Not to the extent in some of the other countries. Once you learned about what the Confederate flag represents, did you have any confrontations? Like, how'd you deal with that?
I mean, you have a bunch. I think my biggest confrontations that I really, had to really, really deal with was just getting pulled over by the cops. I got pulled over by the cops. I mean, it felt like once a week I was getting pulled over. And I think what happens is that you start to kind of there's like a system out there. They start to recognize your vehicle. They start to view you in a certain way. And when you get pulled over by the police, you're kind of at their mercy, right? You say anything back, you do anything, suddenly it's resisting arrest, yada yada yada. That was something I really had to deal with, and really impacted me greatly because it's just the numerous court appearances that you're forced to have to go to, and you're talking about living on a college budget. Those court appearances like $300 a pop. So there's and the worst part about the court system, which really impacted me, is in college you're moving all the time, especially when you don't really have money. You're just like, all right, every 6 months you might have a different address, but in those court systems, you have to now go to the court's website to change your address. You can't just go to USPS and say, okay, change your address, and the courts are going to recognize that. So if you've been, say, summoned to court, you might not know that you've even been summoned to court because they're still mailing your old address. So now if you've missed court, now you have a warrant because you've missed a court date about something that was so stupid and you had no idea about. So it's just like, once you get in that system, they start to nickel and dime you, and just start picking at you, picking at you, picking at you, and picking at you until it just adds the fuck up. And then it's just a really messed up system until you have, X amount of money to just hire some real fancy lawyer and just say, all right, get out of here and dismiss everything in 2 seconds. you're kind of at their mercy. So that was probably my biggest hardship while being in the Midwest. I mean, you can say one thing. I'll tell you this: since I left the Midwest, I haven't been pulled over by a cop since. So you know that'll tell you the story right there.
I think, in London, right, I was kind of mentioned it before, but I mean, I've not had any particular experience with something like that. But I feel like because in London, it's more a bit of an accepting, from my experience anyway, especially where we're from, Jamal. Like everybody kind of just seems to find a way to get on.
No.
But what's your experience of working in the US and being a minority?
Um, I think it's for the most part been good. I think my biggest hardships working has not necessarily even come from race, but from age. I think it's ageism was always a big thing that I struggled with early in my career, where um, you're young. I had my first job. I started on the clock. I was 18 years old. So you got people with kids older than you, and it's hard when you even having side conversations when you're younger. Your references are that time. Oh, my mom said this. Oh, my dad used to tell me this. Yada yada yada. And when you start saying stuff like that, they start to realize how young that you really are in comparison to them, where they're just like, oh, my kids did this yesterday. My wife did this yesterday. So there's always that gap. And then with that, no matter you might have all this knowledge from a book. They have all this knowledge from being in the field. So which one are they going to respect more? The individual that actually, went through the experience that some author is probably writing based on their experience to teach you in your college setting, or yourself. So that was probably my biggest struggle. Now I kind of figured a good sweet spot. Again, working in the New York area, it's a whole different world. There's minorities everywhere. Your CEO might be a minority. There's women empowerment. There's even with certain contracts, for example, there's always a certain percentage of a deal that has to be given to a minority or based business. So you're always going to kind of see representation and an effort towards representing, which I think is really important. So I feel like I'm at a really good spot here. As far as working in England, I can't speak for that, right? Because I haven't worked full time over in the UK. I don't know. I haven't been in those offices, so I don't actually. Maybe Ann, you can speak to that more. I don't want to speak on it and say something that someone would have issue with.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, like I said, I don't. I fit normally the consensus, right? I'm still white, so I fit the consensus.
Yeah,
So I don't really have any experience. But what I can say is that it's actually probably a good thing that you've not experienced any issues in the tri-state area for being a
yeah.
minority. Oh,
I
okay, of
mean,
course, it's
there's
not nice.
always it's kind of a difference too. Sometimes it's not a fair bar. I mean, I'm quite eloquent, I guess, and a lot of the times people will ask me like, "Where are you from?" Because they have this thing where he doesn't necessarily sound fully American. So I don't know if because it usually comes out that I'm from somewhere else or from England originally, I get viewed at a tad differently. I don't know. I don't know. But I think that sometimes it does play a little bit of a part. If I was to be real.
Jamal, I have one last question for you, actually, on my side at least. You have a tremendous amount of wisdom, knowledge, experience as well, and you're looking to kind of share that wisdom, knowledge. I know you have a vision as well, which is really clear for you. The last question I want to ask you is, what do you see your legacy being? What would you like your legacy to be?
I would like my legacy to be the first main staple of my family that started that family tree where now everybody is okay. So, say the kids all went to a certain school, or they all, never really had to worry about saying having to pay for college, or getting that first house was easy. Why? Because we have a family pot where we all help each other out for that first down payment, like things like that. I want to kind of be the spearhead of that. And you talked about the motivation, like what kind of drives you, because I want that for the future. Like I've seen generational wealth from other families, and I've seen kind of the difference in being able to start your life from an investment standpoint at 28, 29, because you've had to spend those first 7, 8 years out of college paying off student loans or paying off certain old bad debt, versus being able to start that life at 22, right? it's just a tremendous difference. And certain people start at different playing fields, start different starting blocks. Sorry. So I want all my future generation to start from the beginning starting blocks of life.
Brilliant. Love that. Absolutely love that.
Jamal, before we wrap up, I kind of want to ask you, where can people find you if they want to connect with you regarding property, regarding aviation, or just generally just to find out more about your story,
I
how you
think
got to America?
my LinkedIn's good. My LinkedIn's really good. Like I said, I haven't started the podcast series yet, so I'm still kind of in the infancy stages of that. But when I do, I'll start to kind of share the website and plug that. And I have an Instagram page I've started for just this new business property yet, but I'm holding it off a little bit until I get some more visuals. I'm at that early stage of construction with the cement pouring, so I want to wait till I get the framing started and really start to show people what we're doing here. But right now, my LinkedIn's good. My first and last name is spelled, and it's spelled the same way on LinkedIn. And yeah, whatever, just send a direct message, and we can just kind of talk from there. Set a quick call.
Yeah, we'll be sure to link you out in the podcast show notes and a YouTube video as well.
For sure, my guy. For sure.
Jamal, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. You're a G, you're a legend. We need more people like you in the world and in America for sure. So
I
keep doing what you're
appreciate it.
doing, man. We're gonna support you. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you and having this conversation.